Welcome to Motivate, Grind, Succeed, the podcast, a show that exists to help you to simplify and systemize success with high performance habits in the 4 pillars of life. My name is Rasean. I am your host, as well as your favorite internet neurotransformation coach. And you read the title for today's episode. We are going to be talking about the things you need to stop doing right now in order to live a happier and more fulfilled life, and just to be a happier and more fulfilled person overall. So, if you're listening to me talk right now, chances are you are a human being. If you're understanding my words, chances are you are a human being. But if we have some extraterrestrial life that's tuning in, more power to you. But assuming that we're all human here, it's amazing being a human being. Let's just be honest. It's absolutely fantastic. However, a lot of times, because our brain is wired to help you to survive and not to thrive, life is difficult. Or at least we perceive it to be difficult through the thoughts that we have and how that is then portrayed in the actions that we then do based on the thoughts that we have. And so what I want to do is take a little bit of time today and explore 3 behaviors that we do as human beings, whether knowingly or not, that we need to stop immediately. And this will help us to ease the burden of life. I'm not saying it's going to be problem free and there's not going to be any issues at all with anything, but it will help to ease the burden that we tend to put on ourselves, whether we know it or not, as well as enhance our overall level of happiness and joy and just contentment in life. And so what I wanted to start with is the first one, and that is to stop regretting the past. And so a lot of people, myself included, when things happen in the past, they tend to be, as my mother calls a lot of times, a mind sticker, meaning that these things tend to stay in our heads. And no matter how many days, months, years it could be in the future beyond that event, things could have even been reconciled properly. If it was between you and, let's say, another individual, the memories of what occurred can still replay in our heads. And that is natural. That is what the brain does in order to constantly remind us so that way we will not repeat past mistakes. That's normal for it to bring back the remembrance. However, where we have the choice is when we dwell on it, because a lot of times those thoughts that pop up, we cannot control them so much, but we can control how long we dwell on the thoughts and what we do with those thoughts. So dwelling on the past mistakes and the missed opportunities and the shoulda, woulda, coulda, that's not going to help us. Because that's in the past. It's gone. It's done. The opportunity or the instance was there and it's done. It is now to be used as a learning lesson. It is not a failure. It is not a fail. It is not a loss. It is a lesson that needs to be learned. And so what you need to do is look at it from a different perspective. Instead of looking at this situation as I shoulda, woulda, coulda, or if I had only done this differently, you can't change it. What you need to do now is realize, if I were to be placed in this situation again, here is what I would then do. That is the best that you can do at that point. And since that is the best you can do, wouldn't you do what is best for you? So naturally, that means to use that information, reflect on it, understand what it is that you can do to then become a better individual and respond, not react, but respond better next time, and then act upon that. Now, this all prefaces on the fact that you were actually able to forgive yourself for whatever it is that happened and practicing self-compassion. I understand mistakes happen. People make mistakes. It happens. Such is life. However, it is, again, not beneficial for us to dwell on those things, because the more that we dwell on them, the more we put ourselves into this negative state of mind, the more we put ourselves into this negative feedback loop, and the less we actually want to change and do. We put ourselves into this rut. And the only way to get out of the rut is to break out of the rut, because it's cyclical. You think of something bad, which makes you ponder on things that are bad, which makes your actions then reflect those thoughts, which then becomes the law of attraction thing that we talked about a couple episodes back, where now the actions that you are taking, you're going to be more primed and more focused to find the negative, which then feeds into the thoughts that you already had. And it's this negative feedback loop that continues cyclically. The only way to break out of it is to stop the thoughts in its tracks, to figure out what is the positive alternative to what it is that's going on. As we said before, you messed up. We understand. However, the important thing is to realize that, okay, it happened for a reason. And now the biggest thing that I need to do is figure out what is it that I can learn so that way I do not repeat this next time. That's number one. Stop regretting the past because it's not doing you any favors. Number two, on the opposite end of the spectrum now, is to stop worrying about the future. Because worrying about the future causes us unnecessary anxiety and stress. And a lot of times, going back to my favorite quote of the brain wanting you to survive and not to thrive, it likes to imagine worst case or unpleasurable scenarios left unchecked. Psychologists actually found that about 85% of what we worry about usually doesn't happen, meaning that there is a pretty large chance that what you are concerned about happening in the future will not play out exactly how it is that you're thinking about. So why is it then that we focus on what could be the most negative thing? Again, it's the brain's natural hardwiring. And you're noticing a theme here, right? It's the brain's hardwiring. It's the natural inclination. It's what it wants to do. And so in order for us to actually change that is to first realize some of these behaviors, some of these thought processes that just happen without us even noticing. That's the whole point of this episode. For you to notice, what are these behaviors? What are these actions? What are these thoughts that I am having that I don't even realize? So that way, when it does happen, I can be like, oh, I just realized that this is the thing that Rasean was talking about. Oh, this is the thought that was happening. And it happened so fast, right? So again, back to the worrying thing. 85% roughly of what we worry about never happens. And of the remaining 15%, get this, approximately 12% of the remaining 15 happens better than what we expected. Meaning that only about 3% of our worries come true as close to accurate as it was originally feared. 3%. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live my life expecting 3%. I would much rather focus on living 97% of the time. Meaning that if I want to live in that 97%, to stop worrying. I know, easier said than done, right? Just like, oh, just stop worrying. That sounds so simple, right? Worrying wastes mental energy that could be used for something more productive. So what I want you to do is ask yourself the question, why? Why is it that you are worried about a certain scenario? Instead of just saying, I'm worried, I'm concerned, I'm stressed, I'm this, I'm that. Instead of that, just defaulting to that, take a step back, breathe a couple breaths, and ask yourself, why is it that I'm so worried about this scenario playing out? What is the worst possible realistic outcome of this scenario? And then think about it and realize chances are you will most likely survive the worst case scenario. Let's say you are worried about doing horrible at an upcoming public speaking event. The worst case is you forget your lines and you stumble and you fumble your words and you're not sure what to say next. Worst case. But I guarantee you a whole bunch of people who would have given the talk are also fearful of that too. So the fact that you're even up there doing it is already massive. But as you notice, if you fumble your words, no one's going to come and take your life for you fumbling your words, meaning you will survive. So really ask yourself, what is it that I am truly, truly worried about that is causing me to have this response? Think about it. Focus on the present moment. That's another thing too. Focus on the present moment. The present moment is the only thing that you can control. What you do now. Instead of worrying and focusing on what can be, think about what you want the outcome to be, and then alter what you do today. In fact, quick story time. So I'm talking to an individual on LinkedIn who's approaching me for assistance with trying to find a job and everything. And this is the same exact advice that I told him. He said that he wanted to go to a career fair and he was planning on going to one, and he wanted some advice on what he should do. What I told him is the exact same thing I'm about to tell you all. When you go to your career fair, what is the outcome that you want? Whatever that is, focus on today. What actions you can do today to get as close to that desired outcome as you feasibly can. So for example, if your goal for a career fair is to land an interview or land a job, how close within your power of what you can control and manipulate can you get to that goal? Can you print out more resumes? Can you do more research on companies that are going to be there? Can you prepare a good elevator pitch? What is it that you can do for that? Scale it up a little bit. Let's say you're at work and your goal is to get a promotion. What can you do within your power that is feasible for you to be able to be best in line for a promotion? Is it taking on extra responsibility? Is it seeing who you can potentially shadow at the company? Is it taking on extra projects? Is it trying to show that you are a go-getter? What is it that you can do? Scale it up again. If you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, what can you do to be able to realize that extra revenue gain? You're aiming for, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50% more revenue this year. What can you do today that you can then be able to realize that gain later on? Is it going to be getting a different software? Is it going to be hiring some new people? Is it going to be streamlining your process using some Kaizen techniques? What is it that you are going to do today that you can implement right now that will allow you to realize that in the future? That's the biggest thing you can do with that. So instead of focusing on worrying about what you cannot change, put that mental energy towards what you can change so you can essentially manipulate the future into your benefit. And the last thing that I want to touch on is to stop searching for happiness in other people. This is the biggest mistake that I made when I was younger, and I wish I could go back about 10 years and just slap myself and tell myself this information I'm about to tell you. Happiness is a personal decision and a state of mind that is not reliant on external circumstances or people. There is a reason why you will sometimes see a homeless individual will be incredibly happy to have a McChicken from McDonald's, and you'll see a multimillionaire stressed and upset, even though they have literally everything they could ever possibly want. Happiness is a state of mind. It's all up here in the mind. You want to avoid external dependence. If you are content within yourself, then you don't need to depend on other people, other circumstances, other influences to then make you happy. It can enhance the happiness, but it's not going to make you happy. If you cannot find joy within yourself, within your life, within what you do, within your passions, within your purpose, if you don't have excitement and joy and contentment with that, nothing else outside of you will fill that void. Point blank, done. So how is it then that we go about getting this internal happiness if we don't have it already? Well, the first thing you should do is create a list of activities and thoughts that make you happy. That's the first thing you should do. Once you find those things that truly bring you happiness and joy, like childlike excitement. Example, Legos. Who doesn't love Legos? Where you can just build things. Doesn't matter if they're the small Legos, the giant Legos, doesn't matter. People like building stuff with Legos, even if it's just something random. If that makes you happy, write down Legos. For me, for example, running this podcast, running my Motivate, Grind, Succeed brand, that makes me happy because I know I am impacting people in a positive way. That is something I would write down. My martial arts or my fitness, that is something that brings me happiness and joy. So I would write that down. Playing video games, that is something that brings me happiness and joy. I will write that down. And so these are things that, even though they are external, they enhance the happiness that I already have. So how do I get that natural inbuilt happiness? This all comes back down now to finding your purpose. What is your purpose? What were you put on this planet to do before you leave? What is it that you were put on this planet to do? Ask yourself why. Find what those strengths are. Reevaluate. Because I guarantee you, whatever your gifts and talents and abilities are that just come naturally to you, it is for the benefit of helping people. So at the core, whatever your talents are, it's for helping people. So find a way to use what you're good at and find an avenue where you can use that to then help people. And that's what I have for you. So, real quick recap. Number one, stop regretting the past because there's nothing we can do to change it, only learn from it. Stop worrying about the future is number two because you can technically change it if you focus on changing what you do right here and now. And third is to stop searching for happiness in other people, other things, and external circumstances because happiness is internal. Once you have internal happiness and you are content within yourself, then everything else is just icing on an already delicious red velvet cake. The internal setting, the thermostat you set for yourself is already there. Everything else is just icing. So that's what I have for you guys for this episode. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you implement something. Take care, and I will see you in the next episode. And guys, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Motivate, Grind, Succeed, the podcast. Guys, again, if you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show for weekly uploads. If you love what you heard, be sure to sign up for that email list. And if you hated what you heard, be sure to share it with somebody who will appreciate it. Also, if you guys want to get access to the show notes or any kind of resource or link or to anything that was referenced in this episode, be sure to check out that episode description below. You'll also find the contact information, any freebies, or any sort of thing from our little corner of the internet. Check out the episode description. It's going to be an absolute gold mine for you guys. Until next time, take care, and I will see you in the next episode.